Panelists, participants, ladies and gentlemen, we recently launched an English translation of the acclaimed book, Conservation of the Environment in Islamic Law, or Ayat al-Fi Shariah al-Islam, a remarkable work by Dr. Yusuf Qaradawi, one of the most renowned and preeminent Muslim scholars. This translation was one of Maybank Islamic's Center of Excellence initiatives this year, and we collaborated with ISRA and INCF University to publish this seminal work. The book was also launched by Duli Yang Maha Mulia, Paduka Seri Sultan Nazrin of Perak on the 27th of October 2022. The book presents the significance of conservation of the environment in Islamic teachings, drawing from Quran and Hadith of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Dr. Yusuf Qaradawi's intellectual ideas and contributions fills the void of addressing environmental and natural resource preservation from an Islamic perspective. We are honored to have our distinguished panelists share their key takeaways from the book and thoughts on this topic. Distinguished speakers, panelists, and participants, ladies and gentlemen, Maybank Group is committed to upholding good environmental, social, and governance practices, and Maybank Islamic plays its part to support the group's ambition to embed sustainability across all our operations in order to drive change for the benefit of humanity. I am confident that the conversation we will continue to have on the environment and Islam's perspective on the subject will make a significant contribution to the sustainability agenda with a fresh perspective on global sustainability. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward us for our efforts, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dato'. Our highest appreciation for your wonderful speech. Before we proceed, I would like to also remind to our guests in the hall, if you happen to enter Zoom, we'd kindly ask you to either mute or log out because it is interfering with our sound system. Thank you so much. So now that we've covered the beginnings and also some of our housekeeping with regards to Zoom, without further ado, we will now commence with our highly anticipated book review event. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Encik Idham Bahrom, and our esteemed panelists, Dr. Marjan Muhammad and Datuk Dr. Azizan Baharuddin, to the stage as we delve deeper into the first ever English translation of the book titled Conservation of the Environment in Islamic Law, written by the phenomenally renowned Dr. Yusuf Qaradawi.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you, Jamal. Thank you for coming, everyone. We've got guests online and also live in this hall. Thank you so much. It's great to be out here and see each other face to face. And those guys at Zoom, thank you for joining us. Now, we're grateful to have the presence of Maybank Islamic's chairman, Dato' Zul. Of course, our CEO, Dr. Rafiq, thank you. Puan Natasha. And then the SC members are mostly joining us from online on Zoom. And we're excited to begin today's event with the book review panel. I'm joined here on stage with Dr. Marjan and Dr. Azizan. Thank you for coming. Both very distinguished experts in their field. Dr. Marjan is the Chief Research Quality Officer and Right Investigator at the International Shariah Research Academy for Islamic Finance, ISRA. She has held several Shariah committee positions. She left us for Bank Negara, where she is sorely missed. And she's produced investigative treatises and leading journals and publications on Islamic finance. Dr. Azizan has a philosophy doctorate in science and Islam. She specializes in environmental ethics, religion, and sustainable development and bioethics. Dato is currently the UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability and Director of the University of Malaysia Center for Civilizational Dialogue. She is also a member of the Majlis Kebangsaan bagi Hal Ehwal Agama Islam Malaysia. Well, if we go through the bios of each of our speakers, will probably take about 1 hour. But I think it's more for us to actually, pick their brains and specifically on the book that we're reviewing today. Thank you, Dr. Majan and Dr. Azizan, for joining us. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have arranged 3 parts format for the panel. In the first part, we will discuss the book. And in the second, we'll discuss the topic of sustainability in a broader sense. And finally, we'll have the Q&A. The Q&A will be open to all here and also from our Zoom listeners and viewers, right? So let's dig right in. And to me, I think it's been a long time that I've actually read a book cover to cover. And after reading this, there are several things that pop up in mind. And one of it, I hope everyone will have the chance to actually read it. We're making it available online for you to purchase. The most poignant point in the book to me personally is that when we talk about environment, the name of the surahs in the Quran are mostly about the environment. We're talking about a surah called the ant, the bee, right? And we're talking about the wind, names of places, right? The animals. Al-Baqarah is the cow, right? How more important can the environment be to us as Muslims, if not, defined in the Quran itself, right? So that's my major takeaway from this. But let's hear from the panelists, right? Dr. Majan, the first question is to you. Please tell us your role in translation of the book itself. What are the key learnings that you can share?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First of all, thank you, Cik Idham. Thank you, Maybank Islamic, for inviting me to this very important occasion. It's always good to be here at Maybank Islamic when you have left it for quite some time. So yang berbahagia Datuk Zulkifli Abbas, the chairman of Maybank Islamic Board, Datuk Muhammad Rafiq, the CEO of Maybank Islamic, all Shariah committee members and board members who joined us together here or online, and all participants of our event today. So, as I mentioned, it's always good to be here to see familiar faces of Maybankers who have helped me a lot throughout my journey as a Shariah committee, whether at Maybank Islamic or in other places. Alhamdulillah. So coming back to the question that Cik Idham asked me just now, maybe if we can flash the slide that I share, please. Yeah, so the book, yes, please. Yeah. So in coming up with this book, there are actually 2 stages that we have gone through at ISRA Research Management Center. So the first stage is we do the translation work. So in the translation work, it involves various layers whereby we have appointed qualified and accomplished translators to do the first layer of translation from the Arabic to English. Then after that, we have our editors who did 2 rounds of editing, and then we send the edited version of the translation to our qualified reviewer who did a very thorough review to the extent that we later decided to to give him the role as an editor as well, because he contributed a lot to the enhancement of the translation. And then in order to iron out several puzzling expressions of the late of Sheikh Qaradawi, then we had several series of discussions. And then I can still remember the word conservation itself took us a few hours to finally agree on the term, because Sheikh Qaradawi, if you read in his preface of the book, he mentioned clearly that the term himayat in Arabic, himayatul bi'ah, or protection of environment, has been a buzzword. But then he chose not to use the word himaya or protection, because to him, he rather would like to choose the word ri'ayah, which according to him, himaya only talk about the negative aspect of preservation of the environment, but the word ri'ayah combines both perspective, positive and the negative aspects. So when we had the discussion, so I was involved in the discussion in determining what would be the most appropriate term to be used to represent the word ri'ayah. Then the word care is also used in English to represent the word ri'ayah. Then after being given quite well thought, then we said that we are going to use conservation because this is more suitable in the context of environment that the book has discussed. So that is a big background in terms of the how we have chosen the word, the correct word to represent the true meaning that the author wanted to convey to the readers. And then the second stage, so the whole translation work took about 5 to 6 months before we submitted the final translation to Maybank Islamic for their consideration and for their endorsement for further the next stage for the publication. So the next stage was the publication work. This is where I was involved very deeply in terms of performing another layer of review. So this next slide, please. So for this one, we started, we were given a very short time by Maybank. Maybank said that we want this to be completed within 3 months. And then we want to celebrate the book with the launch of a new campus, INCF new campus. So I had no choice. Within 3 months, I said to my team, we have to make sure that the book is completed. So from August, we started with the final review, ensuring that, we had played an eagle eye role whereby we must ensure that not any single important points, not any single words of Sheikh Qaradawi is being omitted in the translation. So, human being human, we are not free from errors. So definitely, and then this what I have learned throughout my journey in, involving in publication, there will be no error-free, I would say, except for Quran. And it is true that when, even today, if I look at the pages of this book, then I can easily find some more mistakes, despite we have strived a lot to make sure that there is no mistake. But human is human, as I said, we are not free from any errors. That is the learning that, key learning that I have learned. So coming back to the book itself, what are the key points? Next slide, please. So what are the key points that we have already, we can go and take from the book? The book is actually, it was actually published back in 2001. It is more than 20 years ago. So just imagine, today, the sustainability agenda has been talked by among us at Islamic finance industry just a few years back, but he has already outlined what are the key requirements of preserving environment, conservation of the environment since 20 years ago. So we can imagine how the scholarship of the late Sheikh Al-Qaradawi is. So the book actually grew out of his paper, his small paper that he presented in a conference on environment and Islam. And then he found that the book is so massive that just a single article will not cover what is supposed to be. Then he embarked on writing this book in more detail. So the book, as you can see later, consists of 6 main chapters, whereby the first 2 chapters actually provide a very comprehensive worldview on environmental conservation, whereby he support his argument with extensive Quranic evidences, as Cik Idha mentioned just now. He clearly pointed out that the names of the surah in the Quran itself represent how Islam emphasizes on the role of environment. We have bees, cows, spiders, and many more with the name of the animals and also with the name of plants. So he also, in addition to that, he also provides us with the evidences from the Sunnah, from the Hadith, whereby he collected many and a lot of Hadith and then give us how those Hadith are relevant to the conservation of the environment. And then just to inform the audience that this is where we made some enhancement in this translation, whereby in the original Arabic text, you will find that all the references, all the Quranic verses are being put as a note, as a footnote at the bottom of the page. But then what we did in the translated version is that we put inside in-text citation instead. And then in addition, we also added the list of references in the book so that readers will be more informed of what are the references that Sheikh has already used in writing the book. And also we added some, in terms of hadith, we prepared the from where the hadith was being narrated, who narrated the hadith. And then chapter 3 and chapter 4, if you can see, he provided the arguments or explanations on the environmental problems, where he surveys various current environmental problems, as well as traces what are their underlying causes. And then these underlying causes, actually rooted behind the behavior of the people, which has already estranged from the core realities of human existence. So this is what he mentioned. And then finally, chapter 5 and 6 talk about the prescription. What would be the prevention? What would be the solutions that we can offer? So he offers prescription and then calling the reader's attention to not only on the theoretical perspective, but also he gave explanation from the past, from the history, how the history in the past have already treated any threats to the environment. So these are among the key points that we can derive from the book. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marjan. To Datuk Dr. Azizan, in some of the teachings mentioned from the book, and based on what was said by Dr. Marjan, in your view, what is the level of awareness with your stakeholders when it comes to sustainability?
Thank you so much, Cik Idham. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Yang amat berbahagia Datuk Zulkifli, Chairman of Maybank Islamic, and also board members who are here and also online, chairman and also members of the Shariah Committee, Datuk Muhammad Rafiq, of course, yang berbahagia, Cik Idham, of course, and my good friend now, Cik Hassan, because I've been bombarding him with all kinds of information that he did not ask for, and everyone present. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam perpaduan, can I say, and also salam kelestarian. Alhamdulillah, thank you so very much for this wonderful invitation. As I expressed to a couple of people this morning, this is the first time that us so-called environment lovers of the environment, are encountering the block of people who matter most. You are the people who matter most. You deal with economics, you deal with the banking system, money matters. So seriously, if the corporate sector is not with the agenda of sustainability, I think it will be quite difficult for us to do as COP27 just showed us recently. It will be very difficult to change what needs to be changed. So fundamentally, we have only until 2030 to make sure that the global temperature does not exceed 2 degrees centigrade. And at the moment, it has gone beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade. So if you imagine the planet like a baby having high fever, or a human being having high fever. So what happens if the fever is not checked? It goes berserk, the baby will go berserk. The brain and all that will be affected, right? So similarly, that's what the planet is undergoing. Many earth systems, the water cycle, the carbon cycle, the gases in the air and all that have gone beyond what the planet can encompass, can cope with. Yeah. So I'm sorry to have to say this because this is the mukaddimah. This is the urge, I think, for Sheikh to write that book. And the wonderful thing about Sheikh is that even though he's a theologian, fundamentally, he has the knowledge of science, he has the awareness of climate science or environmental science, he has the knowledge of social issues, he has the knowledge of spiritual issues, of course. And this is the important thing about the term sustainability. It is a new science, in fact. There is something called a new discipline called sustainability science, which started in 2005. It's a long story. Some of the facts are inside the pile of books that we inconveniently, gave our CEO as a gift this morning. So it's all there, and I hope Maybank Islamic, your division, sir, will have a look. Yeah, because we have to have the knowledge, we have to have the facts to move on. Okay. Secondly, before I touch on the topic more clearly, for our friends who are non-Muslims, do not think that this is a session where we are shoving things down your throat. No. By universal planetary global consensus, no less than United Nations Chief of Staff vis-a-vis the environment, has called out about more than 10 years ago on the role of religious groups, religious leaders to change humans' behavior. And fundamentally, this is what this book is all about. Telling human beings what they are, who they are, where they come from, what they are, and how they are supposed to be related to the earth. I'll give you a very tiny example. As you breathe, what are you breathing in? Oxygen, of course. And what do you breathe out? Carbon dioxide. Where do these two gases interact? Where do they come from? Oxygen. And where do they get to? Carbon dioxide? From the green leaves. So I wouldn't go as far as saying that the leaves are our saudara mara, but they are part of our being, our existence. So what do? We cut the forests, in the name of development. So right now we are not trying to be, telling people that what we have been doing is wrong and all that. That is why the idea of sustainable development came to be, right? And this started in 1987. And long before that, in the 60s, Rachel Carson was the first scientist who actually documented with strong evidence what's happening to the planet. But of course, we relax and all of that. And then there is another book written by Syed Hussein Nas, a Muslim scholar residing in America, called Man and Nature, Spiritual Crisis of Mankind. So what happens to the environment is very related to what happened to the human being. So again, without sounding condescending, what she is telling us is recounting who and what we are. So for my friends who are non-Muslims, go back to your traditions. There are elements there that talk about something that is related to what she has been talking about. So religion has been accepted to be a standard mechanism or route to bringing about sustainability, because sustainability science is a holistic science. It not only encompasses natural science, like physics, chemistry, geology, and all that, but it also speaks about anthropology, sociology, psychology, and last but not least, spirituality. But the problem with spirituality is that the narrative, the way of explaining it, it requires scientific evidence. And this is what I like so very much. Cik Dam, you shared what your take-home message is from the book. Puan, of course, But for me, coming from the background of biology, science and religion, it has always intrigued me. Who and what am I? Where did I come from? There's answers from the Western tradition, Western worldview, but are there answers to something which I'm supposed to be close with, which is the Quran? Lo and behold, it is. So the hadiths are all from the Quran as well. And who is the prophet? Embodiment of what the Quran wants us to be, right? So, as I speak, and this is part of the nervousness, I'm speaking to people who make profits. Am I saying after this, there's no more profit? No, not at all. Actually, as I was teaching this subject, I've been teaching it for quite a while, but 30 years in Muslim layer and elsewhere, scientists have discovered that there's so much in nature, right? That if you work on it, you can develop a new entrepreneurial ideas, and I'm telling you, you can make profits out of those new businesses. Contohnya, for example, in this century, it has been forecasted earth repair businesses will be very successful. So right now, I think the encounter, and she has brought us together, the encounter is between those green lovers, environment lovers. They have to encounter. We have to learn from you in this sector, right? You're already calling us industry. Baguslah, tak apa. So terminologies need to be exchanged and understood, re-evaluated. And the moment you speak about sustainability, there's no more working alone. There's no more working in silos. So we hope very much for Maybank Islamic to be the champion, not only in Malaysia, also in this region, also in the world. See, I'm so sorry, because when you speak about the planet, you have to be global. Cannot say, I'm not fit. No, that. Once you take the first step, off you go. And we've spoken with United Nations people. In fact, United Nations Environmental Program, we have been very humbly, we share with you, we, some of scholars in Malaysia, have been part of the drafting team of what is called the Islamic Declaration of Climate Change. We presented it to United Nations in COP21 in United States. And then just recently, we put together another document called Al-Mizan, Covenant for the Earth. And we presented it at COP27. So what I'm trying to say is the faith-based groups are very much inside the journey towards sustainability. So what is my take, what is my opinion on the stakeholders' understanding? I'm one of those people who don't want to be in the negatives. Somehow, no, I've erased it somewhere in the in the brain, because I believe in that hadith, yeah, hadith. Even if tomorrow is resurrection day or Qiyamah, today you can plant a seed, plant it. So a lot of people today, they are very saddened by the fact that, can't do much, can't change much. I don't believe that is true at all. So if I were to be very raw, in my opinion, I can say all kinds of things. People don't care. They still, very greedy and all this and all this. Yeah? But I feel there is a lot of good work done as well. I started off being interested with the group Sahabat Alam Malaysia, Persatuan Cinta Alam Malaysia, all those NGOs. Then, because we think we ought to be serious Muslims, and we believe that the religion has solutions to offer. And this is the other important thing. The religious cluster, today you can even call them industry, because they also rake in a lot of profits as well through what they do. Still low. Yeah, but then again, we have a section in JAKIM. I hope some JAKIM colleagues will get to know about this. They have been interested in how the Maqasid Shariah is actually very analogous or very supportive of the SDGs, 17 goals of the Sustainable Development Agenda, that our country is one of the hundreds of countries in the world subscribe to, right? But one thing is missing in the 17 goals. There is compassion, ethics, and the humanity. So goal number 1 and 2, zero hunger, zero poverty. So we have to look at that. How can that be if the gap between rich and poor is increasing every day? So this is the issue that is very sensitive, and a lot of things boil down to our worldview, to our values, to our ethos. And I will not repeat what Puan has done, and I'm sure a lot of people will be reading the book. And the wonderful thing about the book is she has put it all together, beginning with the attitude, beginning with what's wrong, how to solve it, and drawing from history of Islamic civilization. So I will stop at that, because I think there's so much more to be said, but I think the level of awareness can still be enhanced. Let's put it that way, but it's not zero. There's a lot of work already done.
It's good that you mentioned Maqasid Shariah, and also Sheikh in his book did say that the preservation of the environment is actually embedded in each one of the preservation of life, progeny, health, wealth, and so forth. I think we're bogged down with narratives from the Western world. Like you mentioned, UN SDG 17, right? And how Maqasid Shariah actually covers all of them, right? And to Dr. Majan, from the advice of the book, when it comes to current practice, right, where are the areas of improvement for us for the time being? What should be the ideal state, how we implement sustainability strategies?
Thank you, Cik Idham. I think if you can flash the slides, my next slide, I think I would like to share what Dato mentioned just now and Cik Idham mentioned just now. Next slide, please. Whereby, I have proposed. Next slide, please. Sorry, before that.
One slide before.
Yeah, I have tried to illustrate what is there in ESG and SDG, and then how it relates to Maqasid, and then how Sheikh Qaradawi has clearly laid out in the book the relationship of environment to all these 5 Maqasid. So as we can see over there, there are some missing elements in the sustainability agenda brought forward by the Western thinkers, the one that we are. The thing that I would like to emphasize is that Islam is something which is comprehensive. We know that Islam is a way of life, and it has already been, taught and then being there in the teachings of Islam. It's just that us who do not really appreciate the teaching, hence why when the Westerners came up with the idea of sustainability, we are also championing the agenda. So, not to say that we cannot follow them, but what I'm trying to say is that our true nature, the true nature of our religion has already embedded those elements since 1,400 years ago. It's just that now we have to make sure that whatever that has been there in the teachings of Islam is being implemented properly. And I believe this is why where we are gathering here today to inculcate more education and awareness among us on the importance of preserving our environment. So coming back to Idham's question just now in terms of what need to be done, what has been mentioned in the book, and then what else that we need to do. I think I would like to pick up two perspectives that have been mentioned by Sheikh Qaradawi in the book, whereby he emphasizes on the element of ihsan. You can find one section in the book, he talks about how ihsan played a role in the environmental conservation. And then he gave two meanings of ihsan. Ihsan, because in one hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Inna Allah katab al-ihsan ala kulli shay'. Allah has prescribed ihsan in everything. So whatever we do, it must be accompanied with ihsan. And then the second meaning of ihsan that he elaborated is that it's not only about perfection, but also about tenderness, about being good, about being compassion, and then being hospitable. We need to treat something with the hospitality. So these are the key message that he mentioned in the book. And I believe we are not so good. In terms of the implementation, we are not doing our best level in order to achieve what has been laid in the Quran and Sunnah with regard to ihsan. If you look at the verses of Quran, Inna Allah ya'murukum bil adli wal ihsan. Allah mentioned clearly that we need to ensure ihsan in our daily life. But then to what extent, when it comes to environment, we have implemented our ihsan? Just take an example of us at home. How do we care about our plants? To what extent we do, like Datuk mentioned just now, the oxygen and the carbon dioxide comes from one leaf. Any one of us here plant any plants at home? So that is one of the small contribution that we can do to environment without us knowing that it will contribute definitely to the conservation of the environment. So if, let's say, each of us here plant at least one pot of plant, that will contribute tremendously. And then what more if you plant more than one pot? So cumulatively, it will contribute to the conservation of the environment. And then the other thing, the second area which I believe there's some lacking is that Sheikh Qaradawi mentioned in the book the role of different stakeholders coming from individual, society, institution, as well as the authority. So all stakeholders should play their role. And then these roles are embedded from the Islamic point of view, from three perspectives. The role of human as a vicegerent of Allah, as the Khalifah of Allah. And then the role of human to develop the world. It is mentioned in the Quran that we need to develop the world. So whether we have done that. So coming back to the role of stakeholders, particularly with regard to the authority and the government, this is where I believe, although in Malaysia, as Datuk mentioned, there are several efforts in coming up with the policies, with the legislations, but then to what extent the enforcement of these policies? We see, in KL, all the lands have been, all the trees has been cut, and then the land have been cleared up to build skyscrapers. So I'm not saying that we cannot be doing development, but there should be certain control, and then the enforcement from the authority should be there. The development must be structured. Why we need to cut all the trees? Why don't we preserve some of them while we are developing the land? So those are the things that I believe still lacking in our country, in Malaysia in particular, whereby the enforcement is not really there. When Sheikh mentioned in his book about the role of the government, the role of the judge, the role, and the other one that he emphasized more on the role of what he called is Hisbah, which is no longer in our society now, but it was there in the Islamic civilization, whereby the role of Hisbah or ombudsman, whereby the muhtasib check everything. And then when I first read the book, I was amazed how the muhtasib, how the Hisbah system was implemented during the golden Islamic era, whereby even for a baker, there are specific requirements for a baker for them to ensure that they conserve the environment, they preserve the environment. What should they do in order to preserve the environment? So I believe those are the things that we can learn from the book, and then we can implement in our modern days, inshallah.
I think the chapter that touched on Hisbah was very eye-opening. And like you said, even the baker, they have to wash every night. And the mutasib, is that the term? What are they? Are they prefects? Are they inspectors, right?
Yeah,
inspectors.
True, inspectors. Okay. Yeah.
So that is the part where the authority comes in and plays its role. So to prepare guidelines and whatnot to make sure that everything's in order. Okay, to Datuk, Dr. Azizan, I'm going to give you a free hand here. This is your wish list, right? Tell us what you need from the Islamic finance industry, right? to have a better impact on sustainability. It's recorded.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I just cannot help adding on. Yeah, I think some of the muhtasib were women, right? And you spoke about the golden era of Islamic civilization. I think this is very critical for everybody to take note of as well, because this was between 6th century, I think 6th century until 13th century Christian era. That area called Andalus, of course, beginning from the Arabic Peninsula, developed, because we're talking about development here. Don't stop development. Developed so well, so much in a balanced manner, as according to the principles of Ihsan and everything that has been explained in the book. such that it became the center of learning. Oxford University, Harvard University, and all of that, they learned from the first universities that was in that area. And the scientists, they were also the ulama. So this is the other issue, the ulama and the umara. Who are the umara? The professionals in all areas. So coming back to wish list, so we'd like all professionals, especially banking professionals, to not necessarily be ulama. Ulama comes from word alim, right, Dr. Asma? Alim means ilm. You possess the knowledge of what? Of sustainability science. And that's, you can make something very complicated, you can make it very simple. But trust me, there are ways, trust us, there are ways to make things compact and simple and all that. And this is something that we like to do with you. We'd like to see a smart partnership between the so-called researchers in the institutions of research, institutions of higher learning, with the banking sector, with Maybank Islamic. Let's work something out. And I just learned also that something called financial institutions, something which we never paid attention to. Now we have to. People like in the environmental sector, they have to take note of all these things. And this is the beauty of this book, of the share. He sees everything. And I'm reminded of what another scholar said, every Muslim is born a scientist. And what is a scientist? A person who observes everything. And this is not to say you're a banker, I'm a scientist. No, I mean, this is science as in ilm, knowledge of the facts of nature. So a Muslim observes everything. Yeah? So like to see ESG to be particularly taken seriously, more seriously. When I Googled it, I only saw 1 or 2 associations being in charge, and they claim they know it all. Good for them. I'm not saying they don't know it all, but I'm just saying that it's a niche area, and I think Maybank Islamic can venture into this. I think you should invest in this with those partners that you have. And like we said just now, you touch upon forest, right? And we know the value of forest, biodiversity, and everybody knows we are a mega diversity area. I won't bore you with the facts, right? How many millions of species are dying, being extinct every day and all of this. Why? Because people develop and cut the forest without the knowledge, without the proper awareness of why they should not cut everything off. Because in 1 square foot of land, you'll be amazed, there's maybe 20 species of plants there. And 99.9% of our foods and of our medicines come from this biodiversity called the plants. And the plants, they have their kingdom of their own. And in Islam, we have the nafs al-nabati, we have the plants, they have their own roh, their own spirit, which we should treat with ihsan. Ihsan is wonderful because you do something with love, with passion, with compassion, but also with the realization that he is watching you. The creator is watching you. And this issue about the creator, who is God, what is God, where is God, how is God, that has to be tackled too. When I was growing up, God is a dirty word. Don't mention God. Something's wrong with you, mention God. So I'm not saying that, how should I say? That's why I'm the center of civilizational dialogue. Because the future of civilization depends on multi-views coming together and talking to each other. And we have to act on those principles that we agree upon. And today, sustainability, climate change, problems with the environment is something that we cannot push aside anymore. And we have to make the changes. Okay, back to the million-dollar question again. I think we should pay more attention to the circular economy idea. Circular economy, no wastage, zero carbon and all that stuff. And again, it's not rocket science. Again, it's not rocket science. And where do I get the ideas about this and what kind of new business? There's plenty. Cakap besar lah pula, you see? But there's plenty, seriously. We've documented some of them, and I know of many colleagues in many of the universities, least of all in the sustainability chair you mentioned in UKM. In that chair, under that chair, there's 8 research thrust areas. It covers zero carbon, carbon neutrality. It covers AI. It covers, you mentioned it. They have it there, but there they are, and here you are, and here the policy makers. Where are they? but they are the ones who are tasked with doing the reports, SDG reports. So how did they get the true story? So I think would like Maybank Islamic, Cewa, pandai cakap, to take the lead in this. Why won't you? What have you got to lose? Cik Idham very humbly said you're only a few hundred in a group of few thousand. Compare that to the thousands more with the other banks. But I think this day and age, this postmodern age, postmodern, it's not even postmodern. We were in the modern age and then postmodern age and then postmodern. Postmodern ni, the best thing, you only have to speak and be convincing and speak honestly, truthfully, to the heart. Another issue. In science now, the heart is very special. The heart, according to scientific discovery, research, is more intelligent than the brain. So people are not talking just about IQ and EQ anymore. People are talking about SQ. And where is the seat of SQ? Spiritual intelligence, the seat is where? And we are all interconnected. And again, the more scientific discoveries that people do today, vis-a-vis nature, you can understand that actually you can see with your own eyes. You will be witness to the fact that it is a book befitting all times. So kalau boleh juga, Maybank Islamic make friends with the so-called majlis-majlis agama. They kutip all the zakat and the, I know, kena lempang sekali lagi. Sorry, it's all been recorded. I know this. Minta ampun, minta maaf. I'm trying to say is there's good money there given by people to pay their zakat. And I know there's proper asnaf and all that. The Shariah committee is here, I understand. But when it comes to crowdfunding, when it comes to venture, waka venture, I don't know how you pronounce it, right? There is a lot of peluang kat situ. And I know there's one program in Sabah and Sarawak, the Malwa Forest Research, Forest Reserve, they call it. They advertise, if you pay 15 ringgit, then you'll be helping to conserve, I think, 1 square foot of, prime forest area in that part of the world. So, bagi diri saya, that is a kind of infaq. Also, there's a kind of, Islamic donation also. Wakaf juga. So, why can't Maybank Islamic also help your strategic partners to do these ideas? And then last but not least, there's that unit in JAKIM, right? So we are on this together. No more kerajaan sana kita. No, please let's not have that mindset anymore. Yeah, and we'd like to humbly suggest, Dr. Asma, that Maybank Islamic do these talks, this kind of face-to-face discussions regularly, and there is no dearth of experts you can be inviting. And I think the interaction, the changing of ideas, exchanging of ideas, sharing of ideas is very much an Islamic value, right? That we can not only just do among so-called Muslims, but also among all human beings, semua bangsa lah, especially in Malaysia, this is critical. And we must learn that Rahmatan lil Alamin is a title of the Prophet, which means it's not just for you and I who think that we are already Muslims, who claim that we are Muslims. It's for everyone. This Sadaqa, this infaq and all this is meant for the goodness of everyone who needs it. Because Al-Adil is one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and justice is behind sustainability. Justice is behind all that we're talking about today, and especially the banking sector. I think, and it need not be like that, isn't it? Because Sadaqa is not just money. Sadaqa is your words, your ideas, even your wirid, that is also Sadaqa. The good things that you do is also Sadaqa. So if Maybank Islamic can be like, in the book here, page berapa ya? She also talk about 222, opposite page 222, page 223. Contemporary Islamic ways to conserve the environment. He puts here a list of things that we can do.
You mentioned wakaf and zakat.
Correct.
Yes.
So that has to be expanded. And we must learn this lesson. Leave the proper discourse to the proper experts. I'm just giving ideas. People like me are just bridge makers. I have my own field of specialization. I respect other fields of specialization. Let's respect that. I think problems arise when people cross border and they claim they're expert in something which they are not. So we respect those boundaries. But nevertheless, we need to talk to each other. And I think that one of the things about modern education is the compartmentalization of knowledge. I'm an econs graduate. I don't need to know about other things, and vice versa. You know, I'm an accounts. I'm an accountant. You know, accountant negara. So I don't. No. Sekarang ini there's no more. Sustainability is about holistic measures, systematic approaches, and the ESG, which is in your sector, right, is a very important beginning. So sekarang ni, is anybody doing research? How many companies actually do ESG reporting, and who actually look at their reports? Okay, so I mean seriously, with the greatest humility lah, mana-mana yang boleh, and you know seriously, if you need a list of people that you can call upon, we can help you there. Thank you so much.
I think just to give you some comfort, we are looking at as an industry, not just Maybank Islamic.
Good.
We are also hiring people, subject matter experts.
Good.
You don't need to be an economics graduate to actually become a banker now.
Right.
In fact, in our team, we're getting someone who's got environmental science as their degree.
Yeah.
And we had the interview last week, and I asked him, if you want to become a banker, what would you be? He wants to be a forest ranger. So inshallah he will come and join us.
Yeah.
And also I think the fact that in the book you did mention wakaf and Sadaqa.
Yeah.
And the impetus from the regulators, Bank Negara,
That's right.
is also on Islamic social finance to make it mainstream.
Yeah.
So in our efforts, we do even distribute our own zakat at Maybank Islamic. We've got those programs, but we need more experts like you in engaging. So we will be engaging people from other industries. We are not working in silos.
I just want to add something small here. The narratives, the discourses of these things has to be in an inclusive manner. Don't make people feel that this is Islam ni kerja je, like don't make it, you know, that is very important for us to be mindful of what society is made up of. That is this very practical, maybe it's a political statement, but well, politics is about polity, it's about masyarakat, it's about real life. Sorry, thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, let's quickly go into there will be questions from the floor about the book. Let's go on sustainability in general. Staying with you, Dr. Azizan. In your work, what is the current focus areas that you're looking at and the key trends?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. There's a lot of focus areas. Most critical, most important at the moment, under the chair, we are engaging the media. So we have small monies, as you can imagine. So we engage with due respect to that particular media that we are engaging. We can afford them. So we appear on their radio and digital television a couple of times a month. We speak about climate change. We speak about the fact that we are Khalifah, the fact that we have to leave the world in a better condition. We try to bring in the dunyawi knowledge and the ukhrawi knowledge together in a package, so that people have their feet on the ground. So that the challenge there is you are talking to an audience that's at all levels. So that's where I think the so-called experts need to use language that is easily digestible. So just take a look at, I'm so happy to see glass container and no plastic bottles. Sorry to be very crude about that one. Plastic pollution is still a terrible thing with us. And the latest reports is that it's already inside human beings. It's inside our lungs, our blood. Kita nak tunggu apa lagi? When are you going to start realizing there's no more plastics that should be used? And the garbage, it blocks the drainage. So we speak about things like that, up to things about using high technology in terms of planting and harvesting your rice and all kinds of stuff. So the media is critical. So I'm sure you've got a very grand media unit, right? Maybank Islamic, I'm sure. So they can afford to be grander. You can do other outreach. So again, and the media, they are interesting, group of people. And then people always label them as you only like, sensational subject matter. But I think that's only the failure of the environmentalists to wake them up, to sort of show them the melodrama that is inside climate change as well. Okay, and then the policymakers, kesian kat dia, when there's floods and all, the bomba and all that, they go out, nadma. But then we're still doing mitigation efforts. But we're not telling people why is this thing happening, and most critically, how do we stop it? And then we blame certain people for, deforesting illegally or legally. But is there an awareness raising exercise? Okay. So this is why at the moment, Academy Science Malaysia, they are going to launch, inshallah, a project called Sustainability Leadership. So they'd like some of us to actually do the modules. So they do bring it to Intan and make sure all levels of policymakers will understand and try to implement, right? So that is one. Then with UNEP, United Nations Environmental Programme, there's the interfaith group, multi-faith group that is pushing at the highest level, at nations, UNESCO and all that, to bring, what do you call it, narratives like this, understanding like this to the fore. Because believe it or not, 80% of the world is claimed to be religious. Right? 25% of the world population, 8 billion now, are Muslims. But when we go to Hajj, what do? Datuk. Not we lah, Datuk dengan saya baik lah. When you leave the Holy Land kan, Datuk kan, the plastic. Now you can go to Umrah, you can see. So, and then some colleagues, we're also working with them, they are Indonesia, they receive some monies from Templeton Foundation, United States, to change, to modify the curriculum at the Pesantrens. So we have religious schools, the Pesantrens over there, actually working on the ground to change habits, to change lifestyles, to change the way they do things vis-a-vis sustainability lah. So it's too much to go into details. They also proclaim a kind of green Hajj pamphlet. So no, I don't have it here. When you go for Hajj, bawa lah your own bekas air. Keep filling it up instead of buying those plastic bottles, yeah. And then be weary of the fact that you are in Holy Land. What does that imply and all of that? So many projects like that. And in University Malaya, very proud to say my colleague here, Dr. Asmawati, she's in charge of Green Mosque projects. She's been doing it for a while. Now she's going to launch her project in Japan because there are new mosques coming up there, something like that, Doctor. So you can invite her one day to explain. And all of this actually need support. I wouldn't underline the word finance lah kan. But we need support in terms of what? To employ research assistants, to employ more researchers. And because we've got the ideas, we've got the things, but we need to move fast. And the documentation, the researching, the getting together of the facts and all that requires, you know this point. It's just the book project kan. You need your team. So that is lacking, I think, or can do with a little bit of assistance there. And then we were going to continue with the media, and we'd like very much to, because some newspapers, some local newspapers, as you can imagine, we won't mention names, kan? They every day they come up with good practices. There was at one time the story of a gentleman who actually plant his own rice just in buckets, in pots. And what he harvests is enough to cater for his family's needs for the whole year. Tanam beras, and it's enough to feed your family of 5 or 6. So how sustainable can that be? Now the profit makers, the businessmen will say, so I lose out. No. Somewhere in that process, there's entrepreneurial needs. There's business needs. Okay. Macam I wanted to do it the same. Where do I get the paddy seeds? I can't get it from any shops, right? So my point is the kerjasama between, the cooperation between, collaboration between the financial sector, right, and anybody else is critical. You're always there because you're the driver. And if you look at the maqasid number 5 is bulmath, mal. Mal is not just protection of your land, of your money. No, it's about generating income. It's about economic well-being. Yeah? So all this talk, again, of course, as academics, they write papers, they write books and all this, but we also want to be on the pragmatic side, because my colleague here, she works with actual needy communities. So she has a recycle shop, eco shop, and all this. So she gets the students. This is another thing. There's so many, 21 universities, public universities, times how many students. So these are people who will become future everything, right? So if they can be put in their, can be injected in their mind, in their minds, yeah? And this can be one of their textbooks. It will all go well. It will all go well for the future. And I'm sure with every good deed that you do, you'll receive the barakah. So these are some of the things that we need to change the mindset, like you said. Barakah tu apa? What is barakah? Yeah, and why is it that philanthropy, yeah, in secular language, philanthropy stops at you caring about the people, but in the religious language, no, it goes forever. So sustainability for us is what you do here, and you reap the benefit not just here but for eternity. And eternity, even the mathematicians cannot explain to you what it is, but I'm sure we're all trying to get there, inshallah. Okay.
So you mentioned about awareness in terms of making it into the syllabus of students. And so that was actually mentioned in Sheikh's book. And awareness when you go on radio and whatnot to the greater mass. We do want to help in that sense. We do have a directive from the board members to actually talk more about what we do, and inshallah we will get there.
Yeah.
So I think the last question to Dr. Majam before we go to Q&A, I think there are burning questions coming up from the audience. How do we set ourselves apart as Islamic banks? How do we set ourselves apart?
Okay. Being an Islamic bank, I think maybe you can show the last slide that I prepared. Within the Islamic banking industry and Islamic finance industry as a whole, we know that our regulators, they have come up with various framework and policies regarding sustainability, right? And then these frameworks are applicable to both. But then when it comes to Islamic, Bank Negara came up with this value-based intermediation, in which I believe we Islamic banks, we have already embraced, and then as evidence in the recent IBIM's VBI report, there are a lot of initiatives that have been done by Islamic banks. I think this is where Islamic banks need to differentiate yourself from the conventional, whereby maqasid should be the overarching principle that leads and guide how you practice your sustainability. I think that would be my key message to how we can differentiate ourselves from the conventional.
Thank you. I think the in the title of my job has VBI at the end. I think I need to justify this. I think the question about VBI in our operations, we looked at what the group has in terms of sustainability framework, and it's consistent. It's just that we don't feel that we need to put in Arabic words just to make sure that the end is actually achieved. Let's open up the questions. There's one question from Puan Natasha. She's
Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum, Ilham. And thank you very much, our esteemed panelists, Dr. Azizan and Dr. Marjan. First of all, can I clarify how many questions can I ask? Okay, so actually, I'm asking for myself, from Ratu Zul, for other of you. So you have the lovely list 3 questions. Okay, this is my question first. I enjoyed, I enjoyed all of Yusuf Qaradawi's book. Of course, I enjoyed this one. Thank you for translating it. I think he puts forward a very clear case and the evidence supporting the Islamic ruling, right, on pollution, on caring for the environment, and so on. Now, just, I think the book clearly talks, and our panelists clearly talk about the role of human beings, because this is the action of human beings that cause the balance of nature to be upset. So, kalau kita tengok kan, our behavior, especially as Malay Muslims, people tend to be very concerned about, and I think a very narrow interpretation of halal and haram. So the biggest way to destroy business is you create a rumor that their burger is contaminated with pork, for sure, besok business hilang. Okay, so people are very concerned about contamination issues such as this when they define halal and haram, but they don't question, was the chicken ethically farmed? Was the meat and dairy ethically farmed, right? So the meat itself, the milk itself, of course, as an item is halal, right? But as we learn in Surah Al-A'raf, when Allah talks about the Sabbath, sometimes it is not the meat, sometimes it is a practice behind it that cause Allah to be angry, right? So I guess what I'm leading to is that, have we gone as far as coming up with a fatwa that says that where an environmentally better alternative exists, it is wajib or it is sunnah for consumers to actually support the environmentally better alternative? Because for as long as we don't have that, I feel that consumers will always go towards what is easy, convenient, cheap, and whatever it is. And those are the very practices that are irresponsibly overutilizing or damaging the environment or inhumanely treating animals. That's point number 1, which I think raises this question, which many have asked, whether environmental ethics, like other ethics, whether it is a luxury or whether it's a necessity. And I don't care who you are, what your income is, that, this is something that for the sake of your religion, that is a responsibility on you. Soalan nombor 1.
I'm glad I'm not answering. Can we get the panelists to answer your question first? Yeah, okay. Who wants to take this up? Dr. Marjan.
Okay, I think it's a very tricky question whether we should come up with a fatwa, is it halal or haram? I think first of all, we need to understand from the Shariah perspective, there are 5 hukum, right? We know for sure: wajib, sunat, haram, makruh, and then harus. Okay, so when it comes to conservation of environment, I think we have already mentioned just now, if there is a clear-cut destruction, therefore it would fall under the skewed towards the negative side, either it is makruh or it is haram. But to say it is definitely haram, there should be certain studies how much destruction that action will cause. I think being Sharia scholars is not that easy that you can simply say this is wajib, this is haram, but it must be supported with data.
Doctor, I'm not asking you for a fatwa. I'm just asking whether you are aware of fatwa, because I think I 100% agree with you that these kind of pronouncements, if they are made, they need to be made scientifically and with a lot of evidence and study behind it. And I'm sure that it will generate a lot of debate, which it should, right? But I'm merely asking the question, are you aware of someone who's trying to study this? Because I think that unless, okay, so we need to have a clear position, and hopefully it becomes clearer to Muslim lawmakers and Muslim businesses, but also Muslim consumers, because if we know that in Islam, the general principle, if something is haram, whatever leads towards it also by implication becomes haram, right? So if let's say farming in a particular way is haram because of the destruction that it will cause, then you supporting it, of course, haram lah, right? But I think so that's why I say I think this book is a good start, and I really don't as a Muslim that others take this forward, because he wrote this 20 years ago, and there should be scholars that actually push the thinking and take the implications further. So now I ask you a question on behalf of Datuk Zul. Segera tanya saya tajukan. So the question is, you know, if you read any books of faith, and I read several, it tends to be very much still anchored on our very classical works. And no doubt, you know, our 4 imams came up with very, you know, very thorough works. But to me, it's sad in a way that if you open a modern day buku, it's still structured, the table of contents sama dengan what it was 500 years ago. Like you open, first chapter is purity of water, then wudu, and then salat, which is fine. But in this day and age, I expect that we would need a chapter, for example, on the fiqh of animal husbandry or farming or something like that, because there are detailed issues that need to be targeted. Right? So if I'm a policy maker, I need to understand in detail that this is the level of environmental balance that I cannot cross. Anything you do beyond this, you know, is negative, and anything between this, before that is still permissible. So I think that, and I'm not expecting you to study, but I think that I guess my question is not whether we have that, because I know we don't, but what do we need to do as an Islamic academia to actually have scholars that will write such chapters to complement the books of fiqh that we already have? Because for sure today they don't have these chapters, I can guarantee.
Love the questions very much. Very much. And before I speak, I always say, I'm so sorry, I don't have a degree from Al-Azhar University. Itulah pasal. But seriously, we have been doing Islamic bioethics, we have been doing fiqh al-bi'ah, fiqh of the environment. And when Puan Natasha mentioned there works by Muslim scholars on those things that you mentioned. Yes, there are. Kena buat literature review je. That's all it takes. You don't have to start from scratch pun. You see? But again, you need that awareness and the desire to do that. So people trained in the classics, I'm so sorry, I think maybe they're, you know, full of so many other issues to tackle. They don't look at that one. But inshallah, alhamdulillah, where we two of us come from, we're working on that. So like Dr. Asma, she's very lucky because she is, first degree is in Islamic studies, but she's very passionate about environment, sustainability and all that, which is very good. And she's also in charge of a program, double major, it's a mixed program where you do Islamic studies with science, Islamic studies with economics. In principle, Islamic studies with anything that is important and relevant. Precisely, itu yang perlunya. And guess what? These people, this idea was mooted by the Prime Minister number 7, if I'm not, yeah. So, and we took it up, and dah 20 tahun kan? Almost. And they have proven to be very relevant people. Tetapi this idea is not alien to Islam at all. Like we said earlier on, in the golden era, we've all heard of Ibn Sina, right? He memorized the Quran by the age of 12, and then he did medicine. Likewise, you speak about anything, robotics. The first robot engineer was a Muslim. There's a list of it. And I'm not being chauvinistic here. Mentang-mentang lah dia orang Islam, dia cakap, no, not being chauvinistic. Go look it up. So going back to your points, ada, semua ada. Cuma our take home point is kerja keras lagi sikit, okay? No,
I think better integration, because I think today it's not taught as part of normal faith. Yes. It's maybe a branch of its own. So I think there needs to be better knowledge integration.
Tapi like we said just now, you bidang apa? Ini bidang kita, like that kind of thing. The dialogue has to take place. You bidang, you apa? Don't interfere with us. Aren't you familiar with that statement? Why you sibuk bidang kita? Why are you entering our bidang? That's not your specialty. That is the problem. Okay, I wouldn't use nasty words to describe that kind of attitude. But I'm just saying, if you subscribe to sustainability, you have to stop thinking like that. You cannot think like that anymore. And that's not how Islam thinks pun. All the ihsan tu, one part tu, ihsan towards water. Ihsan kepada air, my word. And scientifically, there's no water, there's no life. 70% of your body is water. So my point is, semua yang Quran hadis cakap is very scientific based. So science is important. Science literacy is important. You don't have to go off and get a Bachelor of Science degree pula lepas ni. No. Very simple. Why can't you eat chocolate every day? Because you get diabetes. Why can't you? Because you get this. So balance, bizan, is all in Surah Ar-Rahman. 33 times Allah says, and which of my nikmat have you forsaken or have you dah langgar like that? See. And Surah Ar-Rum ayat 13 tak silap ayat 42. Surah 13 ayat 42. And it is clear now that fasad, kerosakan has taken place on land and on sea because of the hands of human beings. Okay, itu kena tafsiran. And you know, we have colleagues in the Academy of Islamic Science, we have colleagues in the science faculty doing that also. Tapi tak cukup lah, tak cukup pewawaran. And this is where sahabat di Maybank Islamic can help us do that. So itu satu. But in that ayat Allah says, I deliberately make you feel the effects of the fasad so that you will go back, do taubah. Taubah is turning of the heart. Berubahlah hati engkau tu, sikap engkau tu. So this is the issue. We fling all these Arabic terms, tak ada nak explain. And you feel so proud using the Arabic terms. You feel so proud using the Western terms. Weltang Shung, cakap je lah. Worldview. Weltang Shung. Dia orang scratch. And that kind of attitude. So attitude towards knowledge and Islam is ilmu, iman, amal. The three goes together, right? You've got the knowledge. Okay, it's supposed to strengthen your iman. With the iman, you're supposed to translate it into your actions. So where's the action? So in the University of Malaya, that's why we have philosophy here. Philosophy of science, philosophy of economics, philosophy of law, philosophia, hikmah, kearifan, kebijaksanaan. And that requires hidayah. You know? And so let us, dia ada tiga kan, hablum minan nas. We have to conserve good relations between human beings. Hablum bin nabi'ah, dengan alam sekitar. Hablum minallah, hablum minallah. So the three goes hand in hand. So the changing of the worldview must take place. And in case you've got Chinese friends here, Buddhist friends here, you look at your yin and yang. Look at your, you know. Jadi kita tak semesti eksklusif and you tak tahu apa-apa, you pergilah. No. Let's be inclusive. And this is the other thing pula. You cannot be talking about Islam in relation to other things. Mana boleh? Now you're talking about Islam in relation to science. Science is ilm. Ilm is about knowing nature. Kan? Tangan kita ni. Tengok. Imam Ghazali was a mathematician. Did we know that? Imam Ghazali, when he explicated things, he used science also. And one of God's names is Al-Hasib, kan? Dia maha mengira. So he's a fantastic mathematician. Tapi kita tak kata dia mathematician, he's way above that. Jadi macam tu lah. So I'm just saying this book is good because dia macam spark the needs that Puan Natasha has so wonderfully articulated. So kalau kita yang articulate kat academician, as academicians, orang akademik je lah, orang akademik cakap je banyak. So please dengar rendah hatilah. Datuk Zul, Datuk Rafiq dia kata jangan nimbat lagi makcik ni. So we need to kita kena banyak-banyakkan lah. This is what we do at the Center for Civilizational Dialogue. Kita bukan dialogkan what do we dialogue? Dialogue is a science in itself. There's an art of dialoguing. There's an adab of differing in opinions. And in today's day and age, with regards to something very critical, we need to do this. Kan? The various professions, the various bidang, siapa-siapalah, the various sectors. So we hope very much that this will be the beginning. You know, hari ni macam bulan jatuh ke riba, Dr. Asma. Tak tertanggung-tanggung perasaan happy tu. So we just hope that insyaAllah there'll be barakah to this.
Inshallah.
Okay, thank you so much. Pardon?
Okay, one more question and then we'll take a break. We've got a speaker on philosophy later.
Okay, this is actually Dr. Rafiq's question.
Dr. Rafiq.
Okay. Dr. Rafiq is
quite shy.
Yeah, he's very shy. He is actually, I'm not sure whether you know, he's actually a fan of David Attenborough. Yeah, and so he's been reading the works of David Attenborough. And one of the things that David Attenborough promoted is 5 or 6 very simple shifts that human beings can make to restore or to help towards restoring the balanced environment, right? So one is dampening population control, because it is the need to serve and feed the population that is causing us or causing some of this damage, right? That's one. He talks about gazetting no fishing zone so that the population of the fish in the sea can repopulate itself. He talked about accelerating the transition towards renewable fuel. He talked about eating less meat, so that some of the land that is today being used for farming cows can actually be repopulated with trees. Okay, so if we take some of those things, like for example, eating less meat, if we talk about population control, Muslims tend to get very jittery because they say Allah tak haramkan, right? Memanglah Allah tak haramkan the meat is generally halal for us lah, provided it's slaughtered properly or not. But again, what is there a case, whether we talk about population control or eating less meat, that we choose to do it because of our desire to be good to the environment, not because Allah tak haramkan. So we recognize that Allah tak haramkan, is halal, but it is a choice that we make because we think it's better for the environment.
I like that question very much. It's a strict question. Nak choose environment ke Allah? Hai, environment tu siapa punya? Yeah, precisely. And bila dia kata eat less meat, bukan dia kata don't eat meat. Of course, the extreme people will say don't eat meat at all. Eat the veggies. The veggies will say, why do you eat meat? Why don't you eat just air? And the argument goes on because kita buat this philosophy of ethics and all that. So it's about overconsumption. It's about wastage. And do a study. When you talk about meat today, you talk about meat where the cows drink wine, where the cows are fed special stuff. You're talking about fine dining. I'm not got nothing against fine dining, but yesterday I read in newspapers, local restaurateurs, the high end, they are using local meats now because it's so expensive to import. There's no clash there. If you study the statement, so you can not say as a Muslim, David Attenborough is wrong, no. But excuse me, sir, yes, with qualification, we as Muslims should say this. The story of the chicken. Chicken yang we did a study, dia duduk dalam satu bekas, the size of the book. The book tu, cenim, size of the book tu, itu je dia punya. And let's say the cows pun tak boleh pusing, tak boleh ngering, tak boleh apa. And they are so stressed. And some studies have shown that they have toxic materials inside their systems. And you eat the meat of distressed makhluk. So that is the issue that we should be looking at. And then what's the other thing just now? Makan meat. Population. Dalam Quran cakap you have to nurture and give milk to your baby for 2 years kan? That is natural birth control. And there are other things as well. So again, there is no obvious clash. And in today's world, there is so much infertility. And so many countries in Europe, for example, the population growth, you have 2 parents giving 1 child, okay? And then the child tu either tak kahwin or they're infertile, and so on and so forth. So I think whatever statements become and rational and look at it. I think the explanation will always be there if only you care to look. And not to begin with, you have this stance where no, you are wrong. I've had to stand in front of an audience which is, I think, 90% non-Muslims. Cakap kenapa halal haram. Halal and tayyib is not just for us, it's for everybody. And it's for everybody because of universal reasons. That particular makhluk, animal, cannot because science have shown that it has this. It does this. Kenapa tak nak cakap? Malu kot, I don't know. So this is why I said the dialogue is important and the art of it and the skill of it and the desire for it should be done in the name of goodness for everybody.
Yep. I mean, if I can add to the question just now, Datuk mentioned about overconsumption. Actually, in Surah Al-An'am, if you refer to verse 141, Allah, when He mentioned about He has created the plants, He has created all what can be eaten and what cannot be eaten. Zaitun, an-nakh, az-zar' mukhtalifan ukuluh wa zaitun wa rumman. And then He ends with the word wala tusrifu. Don't be extravagant, don't overconsume. So you can see the beauty of the Islamic teaching whereby if we overconsume something, then you will suffer the consequences. So my last word for this session, I would say that this is, conservation of environment is not an individual responsibility, but it is a collective responsibility. I mean, we as a human being needs to start with our own. I'm glad that today the air condition is not so cold because the trend in any offices, the temperature would be, I would say 16 to 18, but Alhamdulillah, this is not so cold. So with that, thank you very much. And then I would like to take this opportunity to thank Maybank Islamic for championing this sustainability agenda. We started with the publication of the book and we hope more to come, inshallah. And then this kind of collaboration that we need between Islamic financial institutions as well as universities and academic institutions, inshallah.
Thank you. I think we've overrun the time so much, but I think it was very eye-opening and good for everybody. Thank you so much to Dr. Marjan. Thank you so much to Dr. Azizan. We will take a 5-minute break before we have the next session. Thank you so much.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, if we can kindly ask if everyone can retake their seats, the ceremony will begin shortly. Welcome back to our book review and sustainability talk series event. As a continuation to our event, we are proud to commence with our next and final session, which is Maybank Islamic's Sustainability Talk Series, where today we'll embark on a deep dive in the topic of the environment and Islam. To take us through, we are honored to have Dr. Shafiq Burhanuddin as a guest speaker. Dr. Shafiq is a fellow at Institute Kepahaman Islam Malaysia. He completed his PhD at the Raja Zahir Sophia Center for Advanced Studies in Islam, Science and Civilization Malaysia, with a dissertation titled Fazlur Rahman on Ethics in Islam. He is also an author of a forthcoming book titled Unku Aziz Vision of Development, due to be launched by Sultan Nazrin himself, the Sultan of Perak, very soon. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome, and please join me in giving him a warm welcome, to Dr. Shafiq.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allow me just to adjust this too tall for any event. So it happens a lot. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Datuk Zulkifli Abbas, Abdul Hamid, Datuk Muhammad Rafiq, American, Puan Natasha, I'm not sure she's still here. Okay. Board members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, Dr. Azizan Baharudin, my mentor and my former boss at the Institute of Islamic Studies Malaysia. I feel really embarrassed to be presenting in front of her. I learned so much from her, benefited so much from her knowledge and expertise. And indeed, what I hope, in fact, I think she's being too humble by saying that she's just a bridge. That was my wording actually, that I intended to say. I intend to be a bridge because at IKIM, if you may not be aware, we are also a think tank, Institute of Kepahaman Islam. You may know us more as far as our radio station is concerned, but we are also a research institute. So I'm part of that team, and what we sought to do is try to be a bridge to, pertaining to scholarly matters to the larger audience on a range of contemporary issues. Shall I just go ahead straight with the slides? Okay. What I hope to do in this very brief session is just to present to you the narrative, as how Dr. Azizan mentioned, in a very brief manner, in a condensed manner, in terms of how personally myself, and based on my reading, or some of how the Muslim scholars view this scenario, this issue of sustainability, or this issue of the environment, more specifically, right? Because there's a lot of question, or a lot of the issues has been addressed from the legal point of view. But I feel that there are also Muslim scholars, especially in 20th century, they're looking at it from a deeper level, from the perspective level, the intellectual level, or some would say the philosophical level, because for them, this is the root cause that is often ignored by the powers that be, or by many experts out there. So, but the root cause refers to, is based on this assumption that Islam also has a certain worldview. Like all civilizations in the world, the Chinese civilization, the Eastern civilization, and the Western, they have a different way of looking at the world and existence and an environment, including. So I think it's very important for us to realize this, because like this is increasingly being recognized or being discussed in Islamic scholarship in the 20th century, because it's important. And I believe like in a number of some universities, in Islamic universities like Islamic University, IIUM, they do have a subject on Islamic worldview, because this is one way for us to engage or reach out to the modern minds, to the minds of the younger people of this generation, to understand what is the perspective that we should be looking at, or to be under, that we should be, should be understand in order to address, or how to address any problem in the world. And I think this worldview, very briefly, I think how to understand it, basically all of us has a worldview, the way the scholars discuss it. It's basically how it's internalized in our intellect. But how Islam brings about a change in the worldview is, of course, yes, the Quran, but more specifically through the words that the Quran use, right? So that's why, although these 4 manuscripts that I'm displaying here, although you see all same Arabic scripts, Arabic punya letters, but in reality, they are in different languages: Urdu, Persian, Jawi, and Arabic. But why is this the case? Why is it that when Islam spread all around the world, they don't just spread with Arabic, like some people suggest that we do today? It's because all it's needed is to change the meaning or some of the words from the Quran into those respective languages. Although, of course, the script is changed, Arabic, but what they're trying to do is they retain the local languages. Like this, like in the Malay language, Jawi, a lot of the Hindu words is retained, although it's a Jawi script, right? So these are some of the things that foundational, very perkara asas lah, but it's very important, and it's being increasingly discussed by modern day Muslim scholars, because this is the root cause of a lot of the problems that we are seeing today in various fields, actually. And also, for instance, like when we speak of the environment, what is the right term? Because the kind of terms we use will impact the way we think about problems and how to address those problems. In the worldview of Islam, in the Islamic vocabulary or the Quran, the term is alam. Of course, we already use that in the Malay language, but I don't know how many realize that we actually use this term for centuries in the Malay world through the Jawi script. So you see, for centuries, Muslims all around the world, they have a common understanding about this environment, about about universe, about this universe, about their lives, right? But now this is not necessarily the case. So. And also, this is by way of illustration. It's very common knowledge. A lot of the things that Dr. Azizan spoke about how we view nature and environment is common knowledge for a century. Certainly, it's quite certain, because Muslim scholars, they are very careful in terms of preserving the meaning of words and what it implies. Like this is a classical book. You can go to this website, filaha.org. They have compiled all the beautiful books on produced by Muslims on agriculture, cultivating the environment. And like the key term I want to highlight here is mizan. The balance, or mizan in bracket in the middle there, is the aim of this practice of cultivating the earth or agriculture. And this is sort of understood why they embark on either development or or restoring the earth is to make sure they achieve this balance in this universe. But this notion is gone out of the window in the modern day context, right? It's very critical. So if I were to, this is based on my cursory reading of the scholarship of the Muslim 20th century. We will talk about a model or a framework for development. We have it in our, we have a broader meaning, I would say, right? Because we talk about sustainable development this and that. And oftentimes in today's context, it's restricted to the meaning of development of infrastructure, in the sense of having more infrastructures, right? Having more tech, right? But development surely cannot mean just that, because how can you have, because when you think about development, it implies that we are reaching a higher standard or higher level of living, right? But how is it we have all this degradation at the same time, all these mental health issues in the same time? So this is a problem. This is a false problem, actually. It means it also shows that we're not careful with the use of our terms. And true enough, I think if we look at the media, for instance, a lot of the terms we use are very loosely used. Okay? Development, development, that, right? We don't actually define it carefully. We don't understand what are the whole system of meaning that comes with it. So what we are seeing, and especially in the Muslim world, I mean, we have to take ownership of this, right? Especially for the last 100 years. And this is, I think, at least it's just last 100 years, right? But for the last 100 years, this is the landscape, basically. In some of the major cities in the Muslim world, Cairo, this is Maldives in the bottom, the last picture in this slide here. This is Maldives. Maldives. This is beautiful, scenic island where the whole world knows about. But Maldives is Muslim, basically, Muslim majority, right? This is Maldives. And I think the top there is Cairo. One of the great centers of learning, Al-Azhar is there. Okay, what is going on? So I think, and some of the key notions has been discussed in this book by Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi, to his credit. Wonderful book. He basically, what he does is, in my brief reading, he marshal all the relevant sources from the Quran, the Hadith, and the books of the scholars, put it all together under the purview of Islamic environment. Very difficult work to do unless you have mastered the sources. So that is, to his credit, that his contribution to the scholarship. But we also need to refer to other scholars, and Dr. Azizah mentioned some of their names just now, so that we can understand those references in a more meaningful order. Because like it or not, human beings, all of us, myself, the youth, kids, they want to understand things meaningfully. That's how you actually make changes in society, in organizations, in the country, right? So like okay, I'm just going to highlight two sort of very basic sort of understanding that Muslims have perhaps largely forgotten or lost, right? One is the fact that in reality, and this is everywhere in the Quran, Allah has already sort of proclaimed that everything is already in its proper place. Semua perkara ataupun ciptaan Allah ni dah ada tempat dia. Everything, the plants, the rocks, the natural environment, everything has a certain order, ada tertib dia. So it is our duty, when we have knowledge, to make sure we conform with this order, this mizan, supaya kita tak disrupt that mizan, that term mizan I used earlier. Sebab dah ada maksudnya Allah kata we have already made a certain order, kan? Macam ni ada tempat duduk kerusi semua dah tertib. You're not supposed to just do whatever you like with it. You must understand what this order is and build accordingly, in harmony with that order that Allah have already established. Another thing that the Quran repeatedly talks about is the fact that this natural environment, alam semesta, alam sekitar ni, dia ni macam, the term they use, the Quran use, Allah use is ayatullah. This one also is mentioned by Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi. It's basically a consensus among Muslims in the past and present for centuries. Okay? Maksudnya when you look at all the environment, this natural environment, it's not just an object. Macam maksud benda tu dia berdiri tegak dengan sendirinya. Because that is the tendency of the modern mind. Pokok-pokok lah. Macam tak ada nothing beyond that. Kan? But for the Muslim, for the believers, for centuries, kan, when you look at anywhere in the Muslim world, they see it as a sign. Maksudnya macam papan tanda pointing to a higher reality. Maksudnya ada sesuatu di sebaliknya, whether they be scientists, whether they be the average farmers. So they have a certain attitude or perspective in terms of how they conduct themselves as a result. See? Dia ada kesedaran yang sebegitu rupa. So that's why it's not just about the legal injunctions, it's the whole perspective that Muslims have largely understood for centuries, and today we may have forgotten or have sort of neglected it for various reasons. And this is part of the reason, because of the dominance of one particular perspective, the secular perspective of the environment. Of course, we're not trying to reject everything that is beneficial and useful coming from the secular Western world, for instance. But there are certain sort of understanding towards the environment that is actually not the same as how Muslims have understood it. Hence the practices that we see in the modern world. The first picture there is coal mining in Germany. I was in Germany recently. I just went to Frankfurt. I didn't see the whole Germany, of course, no time. And later on, because I was so intrigued by the beautiful things that I've seen in Frankfurt. And then when I came back, I wanted to know more. I looked at the documentary. And when I look at the documentary, oh gosh, this is what they're doing in another side of Germany. Oh, you know, of course, they are super powerhouse in terms of economy in the world. But this is basically what have driven their economy in the 20th century. So, you know, but this is unfortunate, and I think they have decided to stop this at a particular period, to their credit at least. But I don't think Muslim countries have done to that extent. I don't know, you know, maybe in other ways. So when we understand that Allah, Muslims have understand nature has been created with a certain order, they wouldn't want to simply manipulate and exploit it like this, I would think, right? This is how Muslims have lived for centuries. How many of you have been to Istanbul, for instance, or seen the pictures at least? Granada, top left, right? Andalusia, Muslim Spain, Shiraz in Iran, for instance, all these traditional Muslim cities. You've seen a certain harmony with the environment, and why they were able to create such environment, physical environment, because they have that perspective back again about how they understand this universe, this alam as a sign of God. So dia macam ada rasa hormat macam tu. Dia rasa ta'zim kata bahasa Arab. You reverence towards nature. So and they don't simply destroy the hills like we do today, the Muslims in the past. And even when you go to these places, you yourself feel, what do you feel? At peace, tranquil, relaxed. But now because we don't have much of this, that's why we go to holidays and look for this. Because in reality, we all want this sense of tranquility, because this is how we are created. This fitrah. It's our natural inclination. We want to feel in harmony with nature, right? So this is what I shared the previous slides, basically the underlying reasons why Muslims built their civilization like this. Dia mesra alam dalam bahasa Melayu. There's a very nice harmony with the universe. And in the 20th century, several Muslim scholars have, because by the 70s or early 20th century, there are already Muslim scholars who tried to diagnose or analyze what is happening to us, not only to the Muslim, but in the whole world. Because especially as Dr. Aziza mentioned also, that this environmental degradation, they begin to pay serious attention globally in the 20th century. But these names, how they viewed it, is not like a matter of, it's not because they want to analyze in a deeper sense. So how they viewed or analyzed it is that there is a root cause to all of those problems, to all those destruction in the environment, why people behave like that, why did they wanted to pursue that kind of development. For them, there's a root cause, and it pertains to their worldview, their perspective, their thinking. So Nasser from Iran, Said Nakir Alatas from Malaysia, Said Nursi from Turkey, right? These are some of the names. Of course, there are some other names as well. And this is one illustration to understand what they mean by root cause, because often when either society or the masses, when they look at problems, and we often seek to address only the symptoms. Macam we have either for instance, injustice by certain individuals, or a certain wrong conduct by certain individuals, leading to certain actions to our trees and environment. But sometimes we only focus on the symptoms. So therefore for example, our action should be just take down this guy, arrest this guy. But also there's a deeper reason why it happened, why there are such leaders, for instance, why there are such individuals in our society. that made them to do that certain action, right? I think as a civilization, as a community, as human beings, we definitely need to go at a deeper level to offer a far-reaching solution, basically, right? Otherwise, it's just ad hoc, or it's not sustainable, in other words, right? Even one of our eminent academics, Roy Professor Unko Aziz, you may know him more as an economist, but in my study of his writings, of his ideas, towards the end of his life, he pays more attention into looking into the philosophies of not only Islam, but also the great traditions of Asia. He reads the books of Confucius, Lao Tzu, and all the Buddhist tradition, and he finds that there is a commonality for the people of Asia with regards to how they view the environment and nature, which is to seek to live in harmony with nature, right? And this actually is he's basically critiquing or refuting the dominant perspective in the West, actually, you see. So this is Unko Aziz, an economist, right? Our eminent economist. And he wants, therefore, and this is from that article, the role of the university in Asia in the 21st century. And therefore, he wants universities in Asia to actually make sure their education program actually educates people to understand this properly, right? So what next? I feel that, yeah, I mean, in light of what I have attempted to highlight in the earlier slide, I think this is basically the missing element in this very huge discourse on sustainability and preserving the environment out there. There is increasingly this missing element. Basically, is that this missing element about how do you address the environmental problems in terms of the root cause, looking at the intellectual angle of it. This has been missing because of the dominance of the secular view, right? These words, actually, I'm putting like a quote there, because these words actually is from King Charles of England. He once gave a lecture on Islam and environment at Oxford Center for Islamic Studies. And this man, actually, he's very well read on Islam, but not just Islam in the legal sense, but in the philosophy. And he's saying this to all the secular scientists and the most learned people in Oxford University. He said, look, all well and good, you're looking to green technology and offering all kinds of prescriptions and solutions. But this is a very fundamental and foundational solution that we must concentrate our efforts towards as well. This is King Charles. And I'm quite sure he didn't get somebody to prepare his speech for this because that's not his style. Because we prepare speeches for a lot of leaders in the country, so we know how it looks like for someone to be reading from a speech. But if you listen to King Charles, there is a YouTube video, he understands and means every single word that he said. So I really hope, as a young aspiring academic, I don't consider myself a scholar. But I hope that there'll be more efforts to cultivate this missing element. My bachelor's degree was in international business, but I felt the urge to really study these things because I feel that it's good. A lot of my friends, graduates, they work in banks, in the corporate sector and whatnot, but I feel it's also, I need to complement them so we can sort of work towards a better direction, a better future, inshallah. Wallahu alam, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shafiq. Yes, we'd welcome you with Encik Idham onto the stage to help with the Q&A session. So without further ado, Encik Idham and Dr. Shafiq, I'll pass the floor back to you.
Thanks, Jamal. Any questions from the floor? Okay, Andre, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, Dr. Shafiq. There is a damning statement by Antonio Guterres that says that humanity is on a highway to climate hell, and with our foot on the accelerator. So what are your thoughts on this? Are there still hope? Are we too late? So yeah, I want to hear some thoughts from you on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Can you repeat that phrase by Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN?
Yeah, humanity is on highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator.
In one way, because trying to think based on that worldview of Islam, right? We can agree with that second part of that statement of Antonio Guterres, that we are the cause of this accelerating climate change, whether we realize it or not, through our practices, through our institutions, through our systems, system of economics, system of, right? In particular, our system of economics, right? So we are the ones who are doing it. I think because you can't, of course, Dr. Azizan is more informed on the sustainability, the climate change science of it, right? Of course, when we have the state of the earth is such that it will continue to degrade as a result of the conditions that we have created, or the conditions that. But ultimately, is ourselves, human beings. No other creatures are creating such destruction or disruption to that balance, that mizan in this world, like we do, due to our own fault, our own perspectives, our negligence, our heedlessness. And these are all the things that what the Muslim scholars, teachers are trying to address, the root cause, the problem of the heart, the heedless and negligence, the problem of akhlaq, problem of adab. That's why they still talk about this, and that's why it's still relevant. Even the writings of scholars like Al-Ghazali, who lived 1,000 years ago, because although they don't talk about problem of climate change or whatever, but they talk about the root cause of it, like Al-Ghazali, Jalaluddin Rumi, all these great literatures, right? And even it's Islamic poetry, right? It seems like a poetry, just poetry. But actually they are cultivating our soul such that we'll be more responsible stewards of earth, actually, right? So I would say all so these kind of literatures and writings of scholars is also relevant. We cannot discount them. Works like Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi is extremely important, right? And so are the figures that I've mentioned, but also scholars of the past. Therefore, our education system and all the stakeholders involved, we should try to make sure that those we are sort of the adults who are deciding the direction of our children's future, we don't neglect all this as well. But on the other hand, the first part of Antonio Guterres' statement is like an alarmist kind of thing. It's like as if there's no hope. But for the believer, the Muslims, we always live with an optimistic kind of worldview, because only Iblis, the devil, wants us to be hopeless, kind of, in our sort of life. That's why the term Iblis, from the root word ablasa, to give up. So if we are starting to talk like this, never mind Antonio Guterres, maybe because in his role, he wants to wake people up, right? But for the Muslims, we shouldn't lose hope. And we shouldn't get depressed about it. We shouldn't get anxious about it. But if once you've been given some kind of knowledge about it, like today, through our teachers here, our mentors here, try to do something towards it. We may not be able to solve everything, but now that you've been given some knowledge, some understanding, if you have been given, try to do something about it.
I've got a question to throw at you. Think of this scenario, right? What we're experiencing now, climate change, lots of the earthquakes, floods, everything, and what if it's meant to be? So in the Quran it says corruption has flourished on land and sea as a result of people's actions, and He will make them taste the consequences of some of their own actions, so that they may turn back. Could we be experiencing a period in our lives, in our existence, to only come to a point of no return for us to return?
Yeah, it's a very good point, a very thought-provoking point. But what's the point of thinking like that? Then if we are assuming that kind of perspective, it's like we're we are defeated. It's like a defeatist kind of mentality. It's like, okay, doesn't matter. I'll just lead the life that I want, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. But from in the worldview of Islam, it does make a difference because of course, we will be accountable in the hereafter. We'll be questioned. And secondly, from this world point of view, if you want to be a bit selfish, it has to do with our happiness. And happiness is not an emotion, momentary thing that sometimes you feel when you have your chocolate or sometimes when you have your favorite dessert. No, that's not happiness. It's very clear. In Islam, the worldview of Islam, we know what happiness means and we can achieve it. Happiness is that tranquility of the heart. When you have no more wavering in the soul, when you're not certain about the truth, and when you act accordingly in your life, you have proper conduct. That is happiness. You can sleep well at night, right? Sorry, thank you.
Please.
I think the question is very important because we don't sometimes remember the fact that the Quran is a miracle in that it tells us about things that is in the past, in the present, and in the future. And Allah's knowledge is all encompassing. But the point is very important for us it's very important for us to look at that point because sometimes kita jadi mangsa this fikiran is all fated. It's fated, can't do anything. But that's not right at all because we're given free will. We have to make choices. And to cut it all short, in Surah Al-Zalzalah 99, Surah 99, every little atom's weights of goodness that you do is accounted for. I mean, is recorded, and vice versa. So there's no such thing as giving up. But because He is Allah, He tells you what's happening now. And we have that caption actually, what Dr. Guterres said. And I think if you look at the outcome of COP27, it is a little bit of a failure because governments cannot unite in their worldview because some people are still using coal. India, for example, 45% of the world's energy is still using coal. Coal is a major source of pollution. Why? And they keep saying that they have to do that because the poor people cannot afford anything else. And the rich countries who are tasked to give money to the poorer nations will say, we too are in dire straits because of the war in Ukraine, all of that. Jadinya, so do not follow that kind of narrative too much. So we need our own iman too. Sebab Allah says, in a twinkle of an eye, He can change things. Dia tengok kita. And in Surah Al-Muluk, our life is to be tested. Once you have iman, you have to be tested. And this is one of the greatest tests today. We buka je WhatsApp tu, there's all this barrage of bad news. Right, Shafiq? So the issue of worldview and where we stand is very important. Okay, sorry.
And thank you, Dato'. Yes, and I think another very short point is that when you look at the verses of the Quran, you cannot see them in isolation. You just cherry pick sort of thing. That's why the scholars talk about worldview. You see things in totality. You see, so the scholars are trying to make it easy for us when they speak of this worldview of Islam. So just try. Basically, the goal is to try to understand Islam as a comprehensive sort of system and perspective.
I think the question that I asked was more about, is there hope, right? And what Andy also mentioned, is there hope for us? We're stepping on the gas and we heading headlong into destruction. So I think the point is that, like Dato' said, every little helps, and we need to know as individuals that the impact that we do, even if it's not using plastic, single-use plastic, will have an impact, right? So any more questions from the floor before I go on and ask the speaker? Any questions from our Zoom?
We've asked our Zoom audience, but they're still pondering and digesting.
Imba, please.
My question is, Could we accept a secular view of preserving the environment? There are aspects of garden cultivation. For example, the one could say is a science on its own rather than a science with a religious worldview. So that's my question.
So if I could try to rephrase what you said, can we accept a secular view of preserving the environment, like referring, for instance, to this garden cultivation culture or practice? Yeah, I mean, in that regard, we have, I mean, it's integral with all civilization. I mean, the fact that even in the secular West, they may not believe in religions anymore, but they're still, in fact, they are doing better than us. And in fact, they're taking from our heritage. King Charles himself is taking the Islamic garden practice and doing his own Islamic garden in his palace or somewhere in England. He loves it so much, right? So in that regard, yes, but is that itself enough? I don't think so. So from the perspective of Muslims and people of Asia who have a very rich wisdom teachings, I call them, wisdom, right? Hikmah. We have a great deal of wisdom that our forefathers in this whole Asian region have to offer that is still relevant for us today, that the West have either forgotten or neglected, and some of them now they want to go back to even to that resources, right? So I think the secular view, the nature of the secularized worldview is that it is reductionist. It reduces how they view everything in this world. So that's why now they themselves, I think even people like Jeffrey Sachs in the who is one of the advisors for Sustainable Development Goals, recently there's a new publication. He's bringing in people of faith, and of course, like what Dr. Azizan is doing with the United Nations, this Mizan initiative. So now they realize they need to bring this faith perspective into the conversation. So I think in that way, so in a sense, they are acknowledging it's not enough for them to just dominate or claim the whole discourse or the solution kind of territory. Wallahu alam.
I've got one question, right? We've always heard that the narrative has always been Western in terms of environment conservation. They did it worse to the planet. We're at the tail end. Why are we to be blamed? Right. So that's my statement, right? It's like you're talking about like the Amazon. The president says burn it all. So where's the justice in that?
Who's blaming us?
Well, the Westerns have done it to the planet so bad since the Industrial Revolution.
But I get your point. I'm sorry, is there a question just now from the lady from the floor? No, okay. Would you raise your hand? No, okay. In a way, yes. They were largely, if you look at history, the Industrial Revolution came from the West. It all started from that. And prior to the Industrial Revolution is the Scientific Revolution. The Scientific Revolution is the period in history, like 500 years ago or so, where they get rid of anything to do with spiritual beliefs, spiritual realities, right? But now the problem is, it's not their fault anymore. Now we are following that kind of perspective. So we should be, to be blamed. Why is it that we're simply following everything that the West is saying and talking about, right? We should own, by now we should own, we're in 2022, 21st century. And we've got the pool of talents from all areas of expertise, right? And I think we should get away from that blame game.
Any more questions? Dato'.
I have a question, not necessarily directly to you, but my question is this: in terms of IKIM's own initiatives, efforts of sharing the Islamic worldview, how much traction are you getting in? I suppose from your perspective, where would you want to actually see this resurgence or this movement taking place, and with whom would you like to actually collaborate with, so that the Islamic worldview is there at center stage, being talked about, being discussed in a much larger forum as opposed to compared to our modest forum today? Thank you.
Wow, that's like a blind check. No, thank you. But first of all, I hope Dr. Azizan will say a few words about that as well. But I think for the last 30 years, it's now 30 years old. That is what IKIM has been trying to do through various efforts. So the radio is largely for the masses, and we have been having programs for the educated elites as well. And I feel that educated elites is very important because they are the ones who are the decision makers and determining the trajectory of our nation, our civilization, our community, everything, right? So in the end, I think sometimes it's not the whole masses who are determining the trajectory, but a very elite group. So I think what would be a strategic thing to do, and I think this is why IKIM was created, a think tank, right? Is also to try to capture that elite group. And so to me, a reform, a transformation of consciousness, transformation of worldview, or this revival of this worldview of Islam has to happen at the adult level, at your level. So please don't feel like as if you have no more role or no more function to determine the future. You are exactly as Dr. said, exactly the group of people who need to step up and take charge and do what you can, not only in your professional capacities, but as well as your outside of your work, and your roles as a father, mothers, members of neighborhood. Step up, but for a very strategic thing, of course, I hope that not only the corporate sectors, because like every time IKIM does something, we always reach out to the corporate sector to support us and to partner with us. But ultimately, it's better if the rulers, the politicians, because these in the Quran, these are the possessors of command, ulul amr. They possess command, and they have the highest degree of responsibility. And because if they make problems, the whole nation and civilization will be affected. So ideally, the possessors of command, they should be open to advice and listen and know their place and know the place of the scholars. Because now the problem is everyone don't know their places, and this is zulum, injustice. When like you're not consulting to the right people, you're not consulting the people of knowledge, or you exclude them, right? Or you just or everything they are dominating. The politicians only are dominating everything. I hope this is not on YouTube. So, but yeah, I feel that Azizan is in a better position.
I'm not going to take away the thunder from you. But I'm going to give the mic to Dr. Azizan.
So much. I just feel that the time is right. Dr. Shafiq, for IKIM to go to the next level. I think Dr. Rafiq is holding out his hand, golden handshake. So very simply, I think Maybank Islamic can taja satu program khas by Maybank Islamic. So we'll be advertising you, but the program we can discuss what will be the content and all of that. And maybe you will be yourself, your good self, and board members, Cik Idam sendiri, you be because an example of a group that we managed to persuade is Angkasa, Gerakan Koperasi. They've been with Radio IKIM for 3-4 years now, and they're getting stronger and stronger. And daripada orang tahu sikit, orang tahu banyak what Angkasa is all about, how the cooperative movement is actually very Islamic, very community oriented, and it's helping the B40 and stuff like that. So like I said earlier, doing work with the media takes you a long way. So rather than us giving up in what can be done, and that's not a kind of being the melodramatic. In some countries, they say that the suicidal rates are high because they're secular, just secular in their worldview, and then they can see logically there's not going to be an end to this problem. So we are all going to climate hell. So such statements come out of such thinking. Tapi kita tak macam tu, seriously. And I think it will go a long way. Shafiq dia malu tu, Dr. Shafiq dia malu. So actually, yes, please. So Radio IKIM will come to your office as soon as you give the signal.
Have you got time?
Yes. we can have one more question. We have one question from one of our Zoom audience.
Okay, please read it
fittingly.
out.
His name is Shafiq Azwari. To Dr. Shafiq, how do we measure sustainability in terms of also defining the destination for the sustainability initiatives?
Yeah, deep question, as Ilham pointed out. So accordingly, I would have to give a deep answer. We have to make sure we actually define what this notion of sustainability means according to the worldview of Islam, which we have either largely have not done, or those who have done it have not been given sufficient platform to articulate it, or to be so that their articulations or definitions, their conceptions can actually be expanded, to policies, to institutions, organizations. So because you see, the reason why I highlighted this worldview language concepts at the beginning is precisely because we have largely been uncritical, or sort of simply imitating, just copycatting whatever is out there, in the mass media or whatever the international bodies are saying. So, but every civilization, that's why, for instance, China, I'll give you an example, China, they are quite, I wouldn't say they are critical, but they are intelligent in the sense that they don't simply copycat everything the West is saying about this whole sustainability discourse. That's why they are talking about ecological civilization. They want to build their own version or definition of what this sustainability and ecologically viable future is, based on their Confucius philosophies, based on their perspectives and worldviews. So to me, before we actually talk about the measures and so on, I think we really need to have a substantial definition, and materials like Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi, are very useful for that. But you see, to define something is not it's not an easy thing. We take it for granted because, and you see, and the Muslim scholars for centuries, this is one of the most supreme things they pay attention to. That's why only in the Muslim civilization, you can find a great number of lexicons, dictionaries, that sort of that retain, or that gives you a very substantial technical, intellectual, philosophical definition of many things, like this term alam, right? Like today we just use this word, like, oh, alam sekitar, alam this, alam that, but we don't actually know what it means. So same goes with sustainability. I think we take this for granted. So I think kalau, for instance, Maybank Islamic want to venture to invest more, this kind of literature, this kind of research, this kind of scholars who do this work, or even those from the past yang belum diterjemahkan lagi, translate this, because it's a lot of work and it's very valuable, and you can actually, this is the paradigm shift that the West don't have, that we can have. And we really hope that, noble entities such as yours. But to your credit, to Maybank's credit, I was telling this to Dr. Nurliza before the talk. I tried to study what Maybank has been doing. And two things comes to mind immediately right now is, number one is the fact that you are also contributing to tiger conservation in Malaysia, right? That's, mashallah, that's a beautiful thing, because when you talk about trying to preserve the environment, you can't just look at just reducing the carbon emissions, because that's like a tunnel vision of looking at the whole thing. You have to look at the whole ecosystem. So so the fact that you're doing that is brilliant. That's number one. And number thing, like the key term that caught me was that you use this term transition. You want to transition to a low carbon economy or something like that. But why not you just broaden that transition to a more sustainable civilization, as how the people of the Asia have envisioned it or something, because I think low carbon itself is not enough. I don't know, the climate scientists may be able to elaborate that further, because I've read some materials that sort of criticizes our overemphasis on just reducing the carbon emission, whereas you need to look at the whole ecosystem. Like, don't destroy the environment, like the forests, right? Okay. What about the forests and the tigers? There you go. Wallahu alam. Yeah.
Okay. I think we've come to the end of the session. It's been very, very eye-opening and deep. Thank you so much, Dr. Shafiq, and thank you so much for our listeners and our audience here. Hopefully we will come up with more of this sustainability at MIB talk series, and do write in and then tell us what you want to know more, right? So it's not about just
what we are telling you. We need to know what you want to know as well. We're all learning. It's something new for everyone in this room, especially. And we help each other in that, gaining that knowledge. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam. Thank you so much, Encik Daham, Dr. Shafiq. So today we have quite a bit to unpack, quite a bit to digest, and a few more thoughts that will accompany us on our walk to perhaps lunch and even on the way home later today. So one thing that I want to call back to from Dr. Shafiq's session was that his emphasis on the worldview. And in the beginning, when we talked about the introduction of trying to arrive to a solution, we talked about trying to peel back, but perhaps the answer was there already. And we just have to look a bit harder to rich literatures such as by Dr. Yusuf Qaradawi. And also it shows that how Islam has stipulated a comprehensive framework to govern our relationships with the environment long before environmental issues have garnered prominence and invoked concerns, as Doctor showed in terms of the Islamic civilizations long before. It is indeed our duty as caliphs on this earth to take upon the mantle of leadership to champion the sustainability agendas. Next, I'd like to invite Datuk Zulkifli Abbas, Chairman of Maybank Islamic, Datuk Muhammad Rafiq Marikan, CEO of Maybank Islamic, and also Encik Idham, Dr. Marjan Muhammad, Datuk Dr. Azizan Bahrum, and Dr. Shafiq Burhanuddin to the stage for a short photography session. Oh, unfortunately, Dr. Marjan had to excuse herself early this morning. Can always Photoshop her in. Thank you so much to our honorable guests for taking the stage and for that photography opportunity. Yep. With this marks the end of the event. Once again, Maybank Islamic would like to express our most heartfelt gratitude to everyone for gracing this event. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would also like to apologize for any shortcomings. We would like to also inform that lunch has been prepared, and my colleague Hassan will be guiding Dato Rafiq and Dato Zul to the seated room together with the panel members. Before you leave, I would also like to kindly ask if everyone in the hall, the physical guests, to scan the QR code to just log in your registration and to ensure that we can have tracking. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure for me this morning to be your MC. Thank you, Dato. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.